at the Collier Lodge site, and it's in southern Porter County, Indiana. And at one time it was on the northern edge of the Kankakee Marsh. And it's one of the few places that you could cross the marsh before the marsh was drained. And because it was one place you could cross the marsh, people have stopped here for over 11,000 years. So we've been working here since 2004. We've worked from 2004 to about 2012 as a cooperative project with the Kankakee Valley Historical Society and Notre to investigate this site and learn what it can tell us about early people who lived in this part of the county. Archaeology is using the material evidence from the past to understand what happened without using written records necessarily. So it's kind of like a detective, right? We get a lot of physical evidence, and from that, we reconstruct what happened when people were living at the site. A lot of people ask me about dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are before humans arrived. So that's paleontology. It's an area of biology or geology that studies extinct animal remains. Archaeology is part of, in the US, is part of anthropology. And anthropology studies humans, anything about humans. So I think of archaeology as kind of the anthropology of the past humans. Well, this site started off accidentally. I should say the Collier Lodge site is on the National Register for Historic Places. John Hodson had acquired the site, and he wanted to put a parking lot on it. I said, well, you know, it's a known archaeological site. You need to find out if you're going to mess anything up before you dig on it. So we came out with a field school and did some little, what we call shovel probes, and those had a lot of artifacts and a lot of evidence of intact archaeology. And that led us to have a sequence of digs with the Kankakee Valley Historical Society investigating the site. And every year we'd find stuff, and then we'd get a new set of questions. This site, I think, is a unique site for what it can tell us about what the Kankakee Marsh was like before it was drained. But before, it was a wetland that's extended from Illinois to South Bend. You know, so we can learn about the ecology of the area. For example, we've used freshwater clam shells. We've analyzed their isotope composition to reconstruct the climate over time. Most sites only represent one time period or one culture. This site represents many, so you can get a lot of information just from one excavation and just see how, you know, human behavior changed over time. Since they tore down the lodge this year, we thought we'd come back, and one question is, if you take out the concrete block foundation, how can you do that without damaging the site? Toward the preservation of this as being National Register eligible site. Oh, this place produces almost any kind of artifact you can imagine. Our earliest artifact was a spear point made of stone spear point from 11,000 BC. So right before that, this area had been glaciated and was a very different climate environment, but by 11,000 BC, the forests were starting to establish. And this is proof, right when the forests were established, people just started moving in. We found prehistoric pottery from many different time periods. The first pottery is 800 BC. We found pottery that dates up to the 1500s almost. Later on, the site was inhabited up to the 1980s. So later in the 50s, we find little toy cars, and we find 70s, we find plastic army men, you know, and then we find coins from all different eras. So we find a huge variety of things. So it's great you get a really good cross-section of what people were doing here from the preservation. Why do I like doing this? That's a great question, because it's just something that I was working in industry after I got my bachelor's degree, and I wasn't happy. I looked at archaeology, and I started reading the professional literature, and I found out, wow, I can really understand this stuff. I think this is an area I could make a personal contribution. And that's what got me into it. And the thing that keeps coming back is that you never know what you're going to find, right? You could put a hole in the ground, and who knows, you could have nothing there, or you could find something really interesting, and it's always just exciting. You know, sometimes people try to talk about archaeology and give some utilitarian gloss on it, that here's what it's practically useful for. I don't know if it's super practically useful, right? Like a lot of stuff we do, there's not a practical use for it, but it's part of our enrichment. We like it. It enriches us as a human. You know, I constantly have people emailing me pictures of artifacts. What is this? You know, and they want to know what it is and what it means. And I think we just have this desire to know about the past, and archaeology is the only way we can do that if we don't have historic records. So it's the only way for us to look at the past before things were written down.